Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Identity Security for SaaS Management. My name is Gretchen Wickman, and I'm a Managing Director and Identity Service Line Leader here at Edgile. I've been in the security and identity space for over 20 years, and today I'll be joined by industry experts from both Edgile and SailPoint. First, Larry Wolf.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Larry Wolf. I'm managing partner here at Edgile, and I've many years of identity and access management experience, and looking forward to providing information that's of benefit to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Next, Sri.
Hello everyone, this is Sri. I have done a lot of IAM implementations using multiple products. SailPoint has been the recent focus. We'll share some good information in the webinar with you.
Thank you. And David Meigs.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Great to be here today. I head up our technology alliances and partner marketing at SailPoint. Also been in the industry for a number of years, been with SailPoint for about 3.5 years, and look forward to our discussion today.
Perfect. All right, well, let's just dive right in. So here's what we'll be covering today. A brief overview of who we are, the SaaS management current state, as well as the gaps with SaaS management today, how to solve these gaps with a modern identity solution, leveraging both SailPoint and Microsoft, followed by a solution demo. We'll talk about how to get started and then Q&A. At Edgile, we are a strategy-first risk and security advisory services firm, offering a full suite of services from strategy to implementation, training, and managed support. We were established in 2001, so we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We have a highly experienced team, averaging more than 10 years of experience spread across our 3 integrated practices. First is identity and access management, where our strategic partner is SailPoint, and we've been a top SailPoint Admiral delivery partner for 3 consecutive years. Our second, cloud security, where our strategic partner is Microsoft, and we were named their Security System Integrator of the Year last year and have also been nominated this year. And lastly, our GRC, or Integrated Risk Management practice, where our strategic partner is ServiceNow. With these 3 practices, we help companies modernize their security and risk programs, including digital transformation and securely managing the move to the cloud. Now I'll turn it over to David for a brief overview of SailPoint.
All right, thank you. So a little bit about SailPoint. SailPoint is the leader in identity security for the cloud enterprise. And really, we're about ensuring that workers have the right access to do their job. No more, no less. So you might be wondering, what is identity security, also known as identity governance, sometimes called identity management or IGA. You'll hear us use different terms, but really identity security is about answering 3 seemingly simple, but actually very challenging questions, which include who has access to what, that's the current state, how is that access being used, and who actually should have access to what, that's the desired state. And that's across all users, all applications, and all data. And we'll talk more about that throughout our session today. But our market leadership and identity security is just one of the many reasons that organizations choose SailPoint. We've been positioned as a leader pretty much across all the major analysts. 6 years running in the Gartner IGA Magic Quadrant, positioned as a leader by Forrester and KuppingerCole. As a matter of fact, if you take a look, we had some news out today. I believe it's 4 years running with KuppingerCole. We were named the leader in the KuppingerCole identity quadrant as well. So no other competitor, no other solution can match our data and application coverage when it comes to identity security and securing that access across all these different environments. So our solution is about empowering the business users, managing and governing the data that they own.
Thank you, David. As we all know, SaaS is everywhere and growing. with apps like Salesforce for CRM and Workday for HR, TriNet for benefits, and many more. According to Gartner, this year we'll see an increase in SaaS spending by 23%, increasing the total spend to $332 billion. There are a lot of benefits to SaaS. It provides a quick time to value. It allows you to scale faster and reduce costs compared to traditional on-prem apps. However, with the pandemic, many remote workers were signing up for new cloud-based applications and tools to get their work done out of necessity, which means more risk as IT teams scramble to keep up with a flood of new SaaS apps. Being able to control access and know and report on who has access to what has really never been more important. I'll now turn it over to Sri to discuss the gaps with SaaS management today.
Thanks, Gretchen. So SaaS is, as Gretchen said, quick value to clients, but we'll go a little more into SaaS gaps. So traditionally, as you know, identity is the access of a person or a identity in an organization which had all on-prem systems. But now with the proliferation of cloud, and which is more than ever, most of the applications are either SaaS or cloud hosted, or they are provided as a cloud service. So while this has value, it is adding risks too. And so the perimeter or the boundary of identities it has to be looked with a different perspective now. So the identity management, we have to manage as a whole in the cloud and in the organization. And in one of the recent papers from Identity Security Alliance, we are hearing about hacks and breaches every now and then, and over 94% of them are related to identity data. So it is either shared, it is either not controlled well, or maybe it is like a shared account that is used by multiple people. So the need to secure identity is growing higher than ever. And then we are going to look from the SaaS perspective, all these issues, and then how we can try to solve those. So the highest or the main issues that we see with SaaS are compliance. Compliance issues are like the top one. For example, we have Sarbanes-Oxley regulation, HIPAA for healthcare, and then PCI. So all these regulations require data be governed and then access be governed, and access is managed, like when somebody leaves the organization, or what level of access they have, or what level of visibility they have in the application or in the organization. So this is a big missing piece in the SaaS applications. The application really has restricted view just within the application, and then the focus from the SaaS is more on the functionality rather than compliance. The other issue that we see is SaaS is more on a license based. So organizations are signing up for big bulk licenses, and then access is provisioned to all the employees who join. There are studies where like only 30 or 40% of active employees or contractors are really using the app, and the rest of the licenses it's a wasteful spend. So if organization can put into some good visibility of who is using the access and is it really needed, there will be some good cost savings, and we'll talk about solutions for that. And then shadow IT. So with SaaS, for example, Google Cloud or Google Drive is a very famous example. People use Google to share all kinds of corporate data, and there are no controls around it. And then we'll look into some solutions to enforcing controls so that when they go to a SaaS service, either your organization can choose to provision the access right at that time or try to control the access in real time. And then we need support teams for each application to manage. With a centralized identity management solution, you'll be able to manage all the access for different SaaS platforms or on-prem platforms from this single platform. Unstructured data is a really big one. There are really no controls in many of the files. Like the files could contain like customer data, personal data, or any data, and this data, when it goes into different SaaS platforms, it's adding risk and potential for liabilities and legal issues. So we'll talk about some of the controls that can be put to classify and control the movement of data within the organization and between the platforms. So there are some other common issues. I'll just take maybe a minute to talk about them. The other issue that we have is the password reuse. So this is potentially a very big security issue. Like when there are a lot of platforms, we can't expect people to have different passwords, and people try, but they end up just using one password across many platforms. And this is a significant contributor to this breach issue. And with the SaaS, the organization will not have a good visibility of like when people have been logging in, from which geographic location. And then in SaaS, when somebody is given access to a SaaS app, there are really no controls whether he is given access just at the job or more than the job. So with this, I'll turn to Larry to talk about the solutioning.
Thank you, Sri. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, thinking about some of the things that Sri just said and what's happening with the modern approach to IAM, the one thing that Gartner has recently been saying is identity is the new perimeter, but really it goes another level from that, which is it's the last perimeter. And what that really means is that if you've got identities and people that are basically moving around and on different systems, you now have to look at this from a completely different paradigm, which includes kind of people, process, data, but also location, potentially even non-humans, and being able to manage that, but also understand the collection of the permissions and the data and the entitlements. How do you actually manage that, store it, and maintain it in a way that it's outside of your walls? So that transition is really not just to the cloud. It has really changed the way people are looking at identity management, because it's coming down to the people and/or IoT and managing that. And you have to look at everything from a completely different lens, which includes things like zero trust, but also, as Sri alluded to, passwords are becoming an issue, which means we have to start moving to biometrics like facial recognition, but then also being able to manage that information in a way where we can store it and understand it and collect it and understand the permissions. And with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to David, and he can talk through some of the ways that SailPoint is addressing that with things like with technologies like their file access manager. So David, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of talk through some of the details of how you can address some of those problems.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks. So let's start by talking about the stat that Sri mentioned before, the 94% of identity-related breaches that we're seeing out in the industry today. And you know what? Those are all preventable, right? All too often, organizations have this false sense of security with various blind spots and access gaps where people are gaining access to certain applications or data points or systems. They don't know about it. They shouldn't have that access, or they're over provisioned. I mean, how many times have you seen where you've got an employee that's been with a company for just years and years, and nobody really thinks back about, how many different projects they've been on and different systems that they've gained access to. So at SailPoint, we talk about that it's time to rethink identity. It's not just about enabling access, but ensuring that it's the right access. And Larry talked about zero trust, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about getting a baseline, being able to trust that your users and identities have the right access. So it's ultimately about identity security is about enabling access and protecting your business. So you've got to be able to allow your employees to run their business, to drive quickly, to be able to innovate across the organization. But there's the old adage that breaks help you go faster, right? So you've got to be able to enable that access across the organization, but you also have to be able to protect the business as well. And that's really what identity security is. Identity security is the strategic linchpin or control point as organizations are moving towards digital transformation, which we know is moving very quickly. I think some of the stats we saw out of all the recent situations that we've been through, digital transformation initiatives have escalated roughly 2 to 3 years. So because of all these challenges, it really allows organizations to manage that link between their entire user population and applications and data while in the midst of this zero transformation. So SailPoint's cloud identity platform, which as you saw in that previous slide, has lots of different components or solutions that are included as part of that overall solution, but it really enables organizations to do 3 key things. Number one, about securing access, and that's across all of your identities. Whether it's your internal employees, whether it's your external partners, even vendors that you've got, non-human identities like bots, IoT devices, that is very encompassing these days for organizations. So it's ultimately about securing that access, reducing the risk of both the internal and external threats. So some examples of that include provisioning the right access based upon a specific user's criteria, based upon their specific role, based upon the region that they might be in. And it's also about certifying or verifying that it's the right access on a continual basis. Next, it's about improving efficiency. So one of the things that you've got to be able to do is to be able to manage this access on an ongoing basis as part of the overall life cycle of an individual. We talk about it sometimes as JML, joiner, mover, leaver. So as people join the organization, you've got to be able to ensure that day one access so that they're productive, they're efficient, but they're getting that access immediately that they need to do their job. And then if somebody changes roles, maybe they move to a different department, maybe they get a new title bump, maybe they move to a different country, I've got to be able to automatically adapt that change and make the change within the system as to what they've gained access to. And then what if somebody leaves the organization? That's a potential blind spot that I mentioned before, that you've got to be able to immediately deprovision that access for that user so that they no longer have access when they leave the organization. And this cuts across all different kinds of systems and applications, whether it's data within the network, or it could be data that is populated across the cloud. For example, Sri mentioned Google Cloud or Box or Dropbox or OneDrive. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I've got probably 5 different cloud resource sites out there with lots of different data out there that I don't even know where it is anymore, and I'm not really managing or maintaining that. And that's that unstructured data that you've got to be able to identify and secure. You've got to make sure that as people are pulling down, for example, presentations or reports from your systems and putting it up to the cloud, that it's not privileged confidential data. And then what about your IaaS environments like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud? As I'm deploying these infrastructure as a service environments, the same thing. I've got to be able to control who has access to that. A lot of times that's being managed by a DevOps team, by a completely separate team and outside of the guidance and control of your overall security and IT organization. And then I've got to be able to manage all of the cloud and SaaS applications. Sri talked about that shadow IT or shadow access. If your users are just spinning up a cloud application on their own, which is very easy to do these days, I've got to be able to pull that under the overall governance umbrella. So I've got to be able to secure that access, automate that entire control point by improving that efficiency and automating that. And then lastly, I've got to be able to ensure compliance, such as auditing who is accessing what, providing that information, that data for internal and external auditors. You can think about all the different regulations that I've got to be able to report that to. I've got one customer, as a matter of fact, they had to designate 3 individuals to be able to just run reports for IaaS for their infrastructure access 3 days. It took 3 individuals 3 days every quarter that they had to run these reports. And this was just at the role level. This wasn't even at the individual identity and access level. So now I keep moving, I think just keep adding more and more users, more and more access. It just becomes more difficult to manage. All right, thanks, appreciate that. And then just to summarize, really SailPoint identity security is really about provisioning with confidence, ensuring that that identity security solution you can properly provision and deliver the right access to the right users through onboarding, throughout their life cycle, and as they move and change roles. They've got to be able to protect at scale. I mean, think about just all those different identities, how exponential those number of identities get when I start thinking about internal and external identities, the number of applications, the number of specific devices that they're gaining access. So identity security uses very deep analytics and machine learning to detect and identify risks, also uses separation of duties or SOD to be able to enforce security controls and build these enforcements across all their various access policies. And lastly, I've got to be able to comply with certainty by governing that user access, tracking that usage, enforcing those policy controls for all users and all data. You'll be able to demonstrate that compliance to your auditors. All right, so Sri, I'm going to pass it back over to you for us to take a look at some customer examples.
Thank you, David. Yeah, so I'd like to present one of the case study we did for a large vision benefits company. It is in United States and some of the other countries. They have a huge member base or subscriber base. So CISO of the organization identified there is a need for centralized access management among many of the user populations, and then they were not happy with the risk posture of the organization. They had some of the major pain points for this business issues is all the doctors who are using the system, they were sharing the clear passwords with the nurses, with the staff. They had to log in like 14, 15 times a day to check access. And then it was whenever they needed new access for their new doctors or they wanted additional access at a facility, it was painful. because they had to go through the ticket system, help desk, they had to go through some approvals, and it was manual process. There was really no automated way to do access reviews. And the whole onboarding process was really long. And then there were many of the data collection, which was manual, so which was also causing issues on from the usability perspective. So Edgile was hired to help improve the risk posture, get identity access management under control, and then improve the efficiency of operations and efficiency of using the system. As David said, if the solution makes efficient use of the system, then people will use the system, and then it will also close all the security gaps. So we performed a 4-week identity strategy during which we spoke to the IT, we spoke to the marketing department, we spoke to the doctors, we spoke to the members, and then we came up with a strategic roadmap on how it can be done in phases to meet the objectives CISO laid out. So they were looking for a SaaS platform. So IdentityNow, it was a very good fit for their identity governance. In phase 1, we picked up 4 complex applications. They had a cloud HR system, and then they had some internal systems, a cloud customer system. So we took 4 complex applications and then integrated with IdentityNow for joiner, leaver, and some of the mover. And then we enabled single sign-on for most of their internal applications. So the customer could see good value by the end of the 3rd month, where they saw improvement in onboarding, they saw improvement like when somebody was gone or when somebody is no longer in the network, their access was clearly removed very quickly. So we went on to do phase 2, where we had 10 additional applications. We did certifications or access reviews, movers was improved, and then we also introduced access request capability where they could request access for new users or request additional access, and which will go through some approval process and then automated provisioning. So there were some very good benefits, and we got appreciations for improving the entire security posture at the organization. And then there was a lot of cost reduction because of the system. There was very few help desk calls, and there was self-service capabilities user could use to perform the access requests and access reviews. And then there was this whole implementation. It laid out a nice foundation for doing additional applications and then data protection. And like now the system is compliant, so it is greatly reduced any security issues. We will move on to a demo of IdentityNow and Azure. In IdentityNow, what I'm going to be showing is IdentityNow, as you know, is a SaaS platform service. So it will connect to the demo environment. In the demo environment, I have a HR system, and then I have an Active Directory. I will show onboarding of a new hire. Will verify that the person is hired. Will raise an access request, and then we'll perform a access review. And then I will show a single sign-on with one of the SaaS application using Azure single sign-on. I'll show my demo environment now. So these days we're all talking about space. So I'll take some of the former astronauts as my test users. So here is IdentityNow. This is our partner environment. And then this is the demo environment where I have a HR system. I'm going to hire a new employee. I'll take Antonelli Dominic. So we are hiring Antonelli into our organization now. So this is the employee ID. They are based out of San Jose. They are a benefits manager. They belong to finance department. Here is their mobile. And then this is their email. They are hired, so I'm going to set them as active employee, and they report to Carlos Perkins. And I have just hired them. So now to show the joiner process, which is the automated onboarding, I'm going to go to IdentityNow. So IdentityNow is integrated with HR system and also Active Directory. So I'm going to HR application in IdentityNow. And the aggregation data pull, it can be scheduled to run every 3 hours, every half hour, however the organization needs it. And here we are going to do an ad hoc data pull. So I kicked off a job to pull the latest records. I can see that the aggregation is running. Shortly, the aggregation should be complete. And here from the data, I can see that there is a new account. It changed to 192. I'm going to go into the identity list, and then I'm going to search Dominic. So I can see Dominic Antonelli identity is created in IdentityNow. And according to the policy that is set up, we can see that Active Directory is created. And to see more information in the Active Directory, this is according to the way it is set up. This person is created in OU San Jose, OU Americas. And then this is the email of the person. And we can have transformations and different logic to set additional attributes. Here we can see this is the phone number. And towards the end, we can see these are the entitlements. So according to the joiner policy, this person has got corporate VPN. This person is part of all users. This person is part of employment group. So here we just showcased a joiner use case. Now I'll go to show the access request. Let us say there is more responsibility or new additional responsibility for the person, and he needs access to accounts payable group. So this is the access request screen of IdentityNow. And then here we have a role set up to do accounts payable group. So the name of the role is accounts payable analyst. So I'm going to request. And so if you look at here, I'm logged in as myself. So I'm going to request, and I'll say I'm requesting for Dominic. And I would say new responsibility. And we can also, the system does allow to set expiration date if we want to give access for like a month or so. But here I'm not choosing anything. I'm just going to go ahead and submit the request. So I can see the request is submitted. I will give a minute for system to process it. I can see here is the request, and we can see the request detail that it is submitted. If there is any SOD check, it did perform. We don't have any SOD check. We don't have any approvals configured here. So it directly went to provisioning, and shortly it should be done provisioning. So we can see that the status is approved, request is completed. So now I'll go back to the identity list, which is part of the administration screen. So what we are seeing is really admin screen. End users would not see so much. End users, it's only request center, certifications, and then if they have any task they need to act on. So in the administration screen, I'm going to go to identity list. I'll search for Dominic. So we see Dominic here. We are going back to accounts and we see Active Directory. And then now if we go to entitlements, we can see that the person has new entitlements like accounting general, accounts payable. These came through a role access request. So if I go back to the identity, I go to what roles this person has. So we can see that he has accounts payable analyst. So we just showcased an access request, and then we showed provisioning of a entitlement, Active Directory entitlements to the person. And now the other use case that I'm going to showcase is the certification. So basically, this is one of the SOX regulation. Organizations require quarterly certification, maybe certification when somebody transfers from one position to other position or one city to other city, or any changes. There are certifications, and then there are like monthly certifications. There are yearly certifications. So here I will showcase one of the certification where we can try to, the managers will see all the Active Directory entitlements. David touched one of the main issue that we see is over the years, people just get more and more access. And if there is no formal certification or no process, they will just become big security risk to the organization. So in IdentityNow, there is a filter created here. So basically my filter will say, give me all the entitlements from Active Directory. So I'm going to use this filter to build a certification. So this will take a few moments, but yeah, we'll see it pretty fast. So I'm going to say I will do manager campaign. So basically all the managers need to certify. I will name it manager AD entitlement certification. And then the system will choose options, what kind of, if we want to keep the access, if no one acts on it, if we want to remove the access. So just for the demo sake, I'm going to keep it. And then should notifications be sent, and then what is the deadline? So it is 2 weeks from now. Corporate AD entitlements. So I'm setting up the certification now. So it will take a minute. It has to go through all the users who has Active Directory. It has to go through all the entitlements of all the users, and then it has to build a certification and then assign all the access reviews to each of the manager. So it is still doing it. So I'm going to start the campaign. So it is trying to activate it. As soon as in the process of activating, when it is active, it will notify all the managers hey, there are some direct reports who report to you, who have Active Directory access, review their access. So I will show one of the certification, and then we can move on to the next part of the presentation. So here we can see that all these managers, so we are seeing all the managers, all these managers have got the certifications assigned. We have been working with Carlos Perkins, so I'm not Carlos, but for the demo sake, I'm going to reassign from Carlos to myself. I'll just do demo. So it is going to reassign the access review to me. And then now I'm going to, so this is admin screen, I'm going to end user screen. On the end user screen, we can see all these tiles, like for self-service and then any task that I'm responsible for. So here we can see certifications. And then here is a manager certification that is reassigned from Carlos Perkins. So if I see that, we can see Anderson Clayton, he has employees directory. Do we want to approve? Do we want to reject? Or do we want to like put any comments, or you want to select the revocation date? So this is the access review. So we just completed the demo of an access review. Now we'll go back to the presentation. So after IdentityNow, I had a demo of Azure, Azure single sign-on. So for that, we are showing, I'm going to show an example of Edgile Azure Active Directory. We use it for single sign-on. So Certify is an application, it's a SaaS-based application, and we use for the expense system. So this is the Azure Active Directory, and then if we go in here, enterprise applications. So this is one of the SaaS application. It is configured here. If we go to single sign-on, we can see that so it works with SAML single sign-on. So Azure is the identity provider, and then Certify the service. So we have set up with all the attributes that are identifying the SAML signing certificate is imported on the Certify, and then the Certify is set up for single sign-on. And some of the additional things that Azure single sign-on offers is, if we look here, we're saying multi-factor authentication required, and then there is no legacy authentication on Certify. So if somebody is going to Certify, they have to go through Azure single sign-on. I will quickly show how I'm logging in. So if we look at this application setup, we have all the single sign-on configured, and then here, this is the user access URL. So I'm going to copy this user access URL, and I'm going to incognito window. So I'm going to log on as myself. So Azure single sign-on let me in. So now it's going to take me to Certify. So now I'm logged into Certify as myself. Thank you. So this completes the demo. Now I pass on to Larry about how to get started.
Thank you, Sri. Yeah, that was very good. I appreciate you walking through. I think the thing that is sometimes hard to conceive is what really is taking place in the background in regards to integration. And the one thing that make it a little bit easier is when you're using applications like Certify that are more modern applications. So the challenge in putting these programs together is modernizing your applications into cloud, but then also what do? You know, some of the larger corporations are still using mainframes. You still have custom built applications. So you have to look at things from an overall perspective. And the other part of it is, how do you actually get started? So what is, you know, kind of forcing the program to get started? Sometimes it's a matter of an issue that has occurred within the company, maybe from an audit perspective or a risk perspective, or it's maybe modernizing your environment. So the digital transformation and moving to the cloud. So what we like to do is really, from an Edgile perspective, really look at the overall and look at it from a program perspective and try to avoid, you know, what is sometimes called whack-a-mole, which is you have a problem, you try to buy a product, versus you're looking at people, process, data, and technology. Because if you don't look at it from a holistic perspective, it's very difficult to implement an overall roadmap and strategy and get the appropriate funding. So, you know, some of the things that we do as a firm is we focus on strategy, focus on what does the overall company look like, and what is your long-term approach. And not all companies really have a strategy and how they're going to do that, as well as the funding process of what does it really take to fund a long-term program for the transformation. And so, you know, that's one thing that we wanted to talk about today, is maybe give you some ideas on how to get started and what that looks like from a program perspective. So at this point, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Gretchen, and I think Gretchen was going to cover how we get started from a strategy perspective.
Perfect. Thank you, Larry. Yeah, so we have a couple of different service offerings that really can help jumpstart your identity program. The first is this identity and access management strategy. We've done numbers of these for all sizes of companies over the last many years. And really it's a three-pronged approach of doing a current state assessment where we talk to key stakeholders across the organization. You know, we liken these programs to many ERP deployments because you really do touch everyone in the organization. So that does a couple things. It helps you get exposure with all the right people. It helps your team get on the same page and making sure that you are all agreeing upon this is where we are. The second step would be a future state vision based on your risk requirements, compliance requirements, business drivers. Why are we even talking about this today? And then the third is putting together that future state roadmap, 18 to 24 month roadmap, depending on your organization, and really building that business case, which can include, things like the cost for everything, internal costs, external costs. What do we need to do to sell this to executive management to get program approval so that we can start solving some of these problems? So that's the first one, identity and access management strategy. Our next is our IdentityNow Quick Start. This is a very prescriptive approach to get IdentityNow up and running in your environment in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. We have one for access certifications and one for user lifecycle management, where we have predefined use cases, in-scope types of applications, and it's a very consultative approach. So there are deliverables and documentation and training and helping with the organizational change management. So this is more than a proof of value really, but can really help prove the value of this type of solution, of what it can do to reporting on who has access to what in your organization. And the last one we'll talk about today is our SailPoint File Access Manager Quick Start, which is all around unstructured data. Sri mentioned that in his presentation. So if you're concerned about people accessing sensitive data, PII, personal information, healthcare information, you really need to think about unstructured data. And with SailPoint's File Access Manager, we have another quick start focused on 3 different areas. Whether you're just starting, so it's a quick start around the technology and the evaluation process, Active Directory cleanup, which every customer I talk to, I think, still grapples with this challenge. And then the third kind of broader strategy and program definition. So whether you're in progress or you need to jumpstart your unstructured data program, this can certainly help that. For all of you SailPoint customers out there, you are most likely very familiar with SailPoint's Navigate customer conference, which is coming up on August 18th and 19th. If you are an Edgile customer, or if you've been to any Navigate, you know we are famous for our two-step party. Unfortunately, with it being remote, we won't be able to do it this year, but I guarantee we'll be there next year. In lieu of that, we are hosting some social events around the country in these key cities. If you are anywhere near, we would love for you to join. You can register at edgile.com/navigate event, or feel free to reach out to us. Time for some in-person socialization, right? If you've enjoyed today's webinar, we have 2 upcoming webinars around Microsoft. One is increasing your revenue stream by securing your e-commerce platform, and that is coming up on July 21st. And the second on July 28th, which is Introduction to Azure Sentinel Cloud Native Security Information and Event Manager in Edgile's new service offering, managed service offering around Sentinel. So please go to our website and register for those webinars as well. And lastly, we do have a couple of questions, but while I go through those, we have listed out some resources here for you about additional Edgile programs around SailPoint and Microsoft, as well as, of course, SailPoint's website below. So one of the questions that came in was, can IdentityNow integrate with Mosaic HR? So Shri, if you wouldn't mind taking this question, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Gretchen. Sure. Yeah. IdentityNow has a web service connector, and Mosaic is one that offers REST API. So yes, any web service platform, if the system offers a web service, we can integrate with IdentityNow.
Perfect, thank you. Also, how does this solution address segregation of duties?
So IdentityNow does offer configuration of policies. It can be as simple as entitlement 1 and entitlement 2 cannot go together. For example, in SAP, we see a lot of policies like accounts payable and accounts receivable cannot go together. So there is capability to set up simple entitlements cannot go together. And if we have complex, like this person should have done this to get this entitlement, or this person should have this title or level for entitlement. There is also capability to do complex policies. Based on the requirement, we can see the system does allow complex policies as well. And these will be raised during the access request for any violations.
Very good, thank you for that. Here's another one around, how long does a typical IAM strategy take? Larry, would you like to answer this one?
Sure. I mean, it's obviously dependent on the client and the complexity. The size of the company obviously matters, but in general, somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks. Some of them actually take longer, but that's not necessarily consecutive either, because it requires a lot of analysis work up front, and then we tend to version the output of that with the client as time goes on. And as I said earlier, you know, we're looking at people, process, data as well. So organization, we're collecting information. We're looking at the security kind of posture, the maturity, as well as understanding processes, because many of the issues that exist in identity and access management are related to data, and it's related to processes as well. So it's interesting how when we provide these strategies, we see opportunities to help the client that's non-technology related, and a lot of times that happens because across organization you don't always necessarily know what everyone is doing within a workflow or within a process. So sometimes those strategies can take, like I said, it can take 4 weeks, but sometimes they can take longer as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, Shri, I'm going to throw this one to you as well. Does File Access Manager or maybe David, work with cloud platforms like Box, Dropbox, or only on on-prem storage endpoint systems? Sri?
Yep. So yeah, I think it is still evolving. As of now, Box is supported, Amazon buckets are supported, Google Drive is supported. So David, I think you'll have more latest information on any upcoming platforms.
Was that, well, I'm sorry, was the question about file access management or about cloud access management? I couldn't hear which one it was.
It was file, file.
File, got it. Okay. So yeah, so file access management, again, just for our attendees, that's about unstructured data out in the cloud. And yeah, that's pretty much the ones that Sri mentioned, Box, Dropbox, SharePoint, Exchange, what else? OneDrive, SharePoint. I mean, we pretty much cover just about every cloud storage and collaboration tool that's out there.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. And let's see, our FAM SaaS management identity on cloud hosted platforms or SaaS solutions? And David, since you were just speaking, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So FAM is not a SaaS-based solution. It is a solution that would be run within an organization's data center, but of course it does then scan across the cloud environment to all those different sites that I mentioned.
Very good. And what about SaaS management and IdentityNow?
SaaS management and IdentityNow are absolutely true SaaS-based solutions that are deployed in the cloud, that are cloud-based identity platform for IdentityNow and our SaaS management solution as well. And again, that's about identifying and managing specific SaaS applications that might be outside of an organization's control around that shadow IT or shadow access. So yeah, so those are all true SaaS cloud-based solutions.
Very good, thank you. Well, that's all that we have to cover today. First, I want to thank my colleagues and presenters for your time and helping to present this today. And more importantly, thank you all for attending our webinar. This is a Modern Identity Management webinar series. So look for our next one coming up around the end of September, as well as those Microsoft webinars I mentioned a little earlier. So thank you all for joining and hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.